Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of MissFlips. So today we're gonna do something a little bit different. I am not gonna be painting. Sorry. Today we are doing a DIY restoration. I found this really cool mid-century modern dresser and we're gonna make it new again. So if you guys haven't been here already, my name is Marissa and as you can see, I flip furniture. Originally, I started this channel to see if I could save enough money to put a down payment on a house by the end of the year, but it turns out that the real estate market is really crazy and my partner and I decided that we wanted to get into it now. So we, with a little help from some amazing people in our life, decided that we were going to put what we had into a down payment and just kind of figure out the rest later. I will be making a video showing you guys all of my house hunting experiences. It has been a crazy time. So many people are in the market right now trying to get their hands on a house and we are just trying to get them first. But put a pin in that because we're gonna get back to that later. With that being said, let's get flipping. So when it comes to getting started on any piece, you want to start off by taking the hardware off and all the drawers out. This way you can clean in any nooks and make sure that you get all the grease and all that stuff off before you get started on staining or painting. And my first step is going to be to clean off the hardware, and I'm doing this by putting a little bit of water onto my hardware first and then putting some Barkeeper's Friend on it. It's a powder, you can get it off Amazon, and I will definitely make sure to put it in the link below. So after I let them sit for a little bit, I actually went and scrubbed them with a really light steel wool sponge, and this just made them really nice and shiny and back to their original gold kind of color. And as I said in my last video, if you guys haven't watched that, make sure to check it out. I'll make sure to include the link here. But I have never understood why we clean before we sand. So I'm just gonna go ahead and sand this piece and then clean afterwards. So when you're sanding a vintage piece, a lot of these pieces have veneer on it, which is a really thin layer of wood on top. So you want to make sure that you're starting off with the right grit sandpaper. I used a 180 grit and kind of just tested it out. This seemed to work pretty good as far as getting off the top layer of stain. But if I was to do this again, honestly, I'm thinking I would probably go the citrus strip route and just layer it with citrus strip and scrape it off with a plastic paint remover instead, because this way there are absolutely no chances that you're gonna go through the veneer at any point, which I kind of did around certain edges. So unfortunately my phone got overheated when I was filming the wood filler part of this video, but it's so easy. Just make sure you get stainable wood filler and then fill those holes right up and just sand right over it to give it a nice smooth finish. For this project, I actually did get some legs off of Amazon that I will include in the description. I wanted them to be the same finish as the rest of the piece, so I went ahead and sanded them down because they did come with a clear finish on them already. So I sanded them down so that I would be able to stain them and make them the same color as the rest of the piece. And once all of it was sanded, I made sure to go over every single part that I sanded with a 220 grit. That way it would be really soft and smooth. For the base of this piece, I did end up having to take off the little skirt that was there. And if you notice, I started hitting it with a hammer, and that did not at all go as planned. So of course, with a nice quality piece like this, it's probably made well. So you want to inspect your piece first and make sure there aren't any holes where you can screw your screws out before you go at it with a hammer. I learned this the hard way, obviously, and ended up having to fix that later. So we went ahead and took out the screws and took off the base. A few of these screws had been in there for obviously a long time, so they did have a lot of rust on them, so I actually wasn't able to screw them out. So I had to go in there and kind of chisel them out of there and loosen them up just so I could pry off the boards. And this is how I did it. So if you take a look, they do have these kind of reinforcements, these wooden pieces, and if you guys don't know what it sounds like when a saw hits a screw, so I obviously couldn't saw them off, so I had to find another way to get them off of the base, and I ended up having to pull off the pieces of woods that they were like glued to or nailed to or whatever. And then I started putting my legs together. These are just so simple. You just screw the metal into the legs and then screw the metal onto the piece itself. And it worked so well. They were so sturdy and stable. They didn't wiggle at all. And now this piece is complete with the mid-century legs. So when researching how to refurbish mid-century pieces, I saw that a lot of the people used a gel stain. So I went ahead and decided that I was going to go for it. So I chose a gel stain in mahogany color, and I really liked the color, but I don't know if I was doing it wrong or what, but it dried so unbelievably quickly. I had to work with this at lightning speed, otherwise it was just gonna gunk up and get sticky and really hard to work with. So I kind of had to do this as quickly and as like sparingly as I possibly could, and I mean that in the sense that I only did one kind of chunk at a time and making sure to wipe it off immediately after. I mean, granted, it was really hot outside, so that definitely plays into drying times, I know. Just be really careful when working with this stuff. So before moving on to the second coat, I made sure to let it dry for a couple of hours before I did that, and even then it wasn't long enough. I ended up putting it on, and I don't know whether I was just feeling cocky or just trying to rush it and make it a faster process when I really should have been patient with it, but it got really sticky and hard to work with, and I just had to It's weird. I found out that the more stain I put on, the more stain I removed from the layer below. So I just applied more stain to remove the underneath layer, but that didn't work for the side of it. So I ended up actually having to go back over and sand it, because at the end it just looked so sticky and clumpy and weird and had like towel prints in it, and I just couldn't figure out how to fix that. As you can see here, it's just really streaky and not at all how I wanted this piece to look. So I went back over and sanded it and tried to get all of that finish off and just do it over again, because it just was not working. I guess my main tip with this would definitely be to just be patient. I think with this, I just had a lot going on, from bouncing back and forth from being home to having to go see a new house, and all that sort of stuff. I was just kind of all over the place, and so I really tried to rush this piece when I shouldn't have. Here I'm sanding off chunks that I didn't sand before I stained to try to cover up my mistakes, and it actually worked pretty well. I'm actually kind of happy with it, but still, just don't rush. Take your time, make sure you're doing it right, and learn from my mistakes. So I went in with the second coat, and I was actually really happy with that, so I decided to keep it that way and not put another coat on it. So for the finish, I decided to go with a wipe-on poly in the satin finish, and I actually ended up doing this too soon. If you see this, you've gone too soon. I definitely tried to rush it, and I went probably about 4 hours after I had stained it, which was apparently too soon. I thought that would be enough time, but it was not. And the second time I went over it was the next day, and it seemed to do a pretty good job. There was still a little bit of residue that came off, even though I waited an entire evening for it to dry. There still was a little bit. So just make sure you're reading those directions and testing it out maybe with your hand or with a little napkin before you do it. So for the top coat, I did apply 3 layers of this, letting it dry before I put on the next layer and before I did this stage of the process of putting back on the hardware. This top left drawer wasn't sliding very well, so all I did was just chip off a part of a candle that I had in my house and rub it along the part where it was going to be sliding. This will just make it slide a lot easier and smoother. Did you see that? Did you see how good that looked? It looks so good. It looks so good. I am so unbelievably happy. So if you guys come across a piece like this, don't think that it's too far gone or that, you know, it's grimy or dirty, or don't get it because whatever reason, it is doable and things are so salvageable for a really, really low price. This was a vintage, authentic Drexel dresser. I hope you guys learned a lot from this. I know I did, and I know that I would do a lot of things differently, so I hope you learned what not to do. And what to do, honestly, because there's a few things that I did wrong, definitely, but overall, I am extremely happy with how it turned out, so I had to do something right? Alright, so let's talk numbers. So I bought this dresser for $75 off of Facebook Marketplace, and including the stain, the wipe-on poly, and the legs, I spent roughly about $120. Not including drying time, it probably took me roughly about 6 hours. So not that much time at all. This was not a long process. The only thing that was long was the drying time for the poly and for the different coats of stuff. So yeah, it was really, really, really simple. And so I'm gonna be listing it on Facebook Marketplace for $5.50. So fingers crossed, we'll see if it sells. I know it's a mid-century piece, and I know that those pieces are flying off the shelves. So we're gonna see if we can get a good bang for our buck, and I will let you guys know. A great way to stay updated on whether or not I have sold a piece is to follow me on Instagram. I do have a highlight story on there that you can go and check out and just see if I've sold a piece, or see all the behind the scenes, see what I've bought for upcoming videos and all that sort of stuff. So make sure to give me a follow on there. I also have a TikTok, which is the same handle, the MissFlips, where I'm just showing little mini versions of these videos. And as always, if you guys like this video, please make sure to subscribe and like and share with all your friends and do all that good stuff so we can just be a happy flippin' family. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Mwah!